The man in the soot-stained coat. The sky over Pine Ridge was the color of smoke. Ash drifted through the wind like gray snowflakes. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the smell of burning wood clung to the air. A wildfire had broken out 2 days earlier in the hills just outside the small town. The flames were aggressive, unpredictable, and fast. Volunteers were exhausted. The local fire department was stretched beyond capacity. At the temporary fire base near the high school parking lot, tension crackled like static. Radios buzzed. Boots stomped through gravel. The fire chief, a man named Calder Haynes, barked orders with the tone of someone used to control and used to being obeyed. Who left this gear by the entrance? This is not a garage sale, people. It's a fire zone, Calder shouted, glaring at a set of borrowed axes and a soot-stained coat resting neatly on a bench. A volunteer stepped forward. Sir, I think that was the guy who came in last night. He's not on the official roster, but he's been working non-stop. Working? Calder scoffed. Doing what? Playing dress up. He turned to a nearby paramedic. Where is this mystery helper now? Before anyone could answer, a figure emerged from behind the supply tent, tall, lean, with soot across his face and ash in his hair. He wore old fire boots, a faded gray t-shirt soaked in sweat, and his eyes, though tired, burned with calm focus. I just finished clearing the West Ridge Trail, he said quietly. There were propane tanks behind the cabins. I moved them before the fire jumped the ridge line. Calder squinted. You're not with us. You're not certified. Who the hell are you? The man wiped sweat from his brow. My name's Keanu. Some of the younger firefighters glanced at each other. One of them mouthed the name with disbelief. Calder, however, didn't react. Keanu what? He snapped. You think because you helped out one night, you get to play hero? This isn't a movie. Keanu didn't flinch. I'm not trying to be a hero, just trying to help. Calder stepped closer, eyeing him up and down. You think you can walk in here and teach us how to handle our fires? You have no uniform, no badge, no chain of command. Keanu glanced down, humble. No, sir. But I've seen fires before. I've helped crews before. Quietly, I just saw people needed help. Calder's voice rose. Are you some kind of Hollywood firefighter now? A few people nearby went silent. One of the female volunteers bit her lip. Another one looked away. Keanu gave a small shrug. I'm just here to move what I can, carry what I must, and make sure no one's left behind. Well, Calder said coldly, you've done your good deed. Now get off my base. Keanu looked at him, not angry, just steady. You're making this about ego, but this is about people. Calder's face turned red. You're dismissed, without a word. Keanu turned and walked away. No argument, no scene, just silence. He picked up his coat, slung it over his shoulder, and left the camp. One of the young firefighters, a man named Jonah, ran after him. Hey, wait, I knew it was you. You really are Keanu Reeves, aren't you? Keanu smiled faintly. I don't usually introduce myself. Doesn't help in situations like this. Jonah looked confused. Why would you even be here? Because I know what loss smells like, Keanu said quietly. I've seen people trapped in cars, burned homes, fear in their eyes. I've felt helpless, and I decided that if I ever had a chance to help again, I wouldn't wait for permission. Jonah stared at him. Where are you going? Wherever the fire hasn't gone yet. Jonah hesitated, then handed him a spare radio. You didn't get this from me. Keanu nodded and disappeared down the dirt path toward the eastern woods, where a thin line of smoke curled into the sky. Meanwhile, back at the base, Calder barked orders louder than before, almost as if to prove something. But a few of the younger volunteers whispered among themselves, was that really him? Did you see the way he talked to the chief like he didn't care about status? He saved that trailer camp last night. I saw him carry a kid with asthma on his back. As the fire pressed in from the east, Keanu worked through the brush, clearing dried branches, digging fire breaks with a shovel he borrowed from an abandoned truck. He didn't stop to check the time, didn't wait for backup. He wasn't acting like a celebrity. He was working like a man who'd been here before, because he had 10 years ago. While driving through a canyon in Northern California, Keanu had come across a car on fire. Trapped inside was a woman and her child. He pulled them out seconds before the tank exploded. The memory had never left him. Not the smoke, not the fear, not the silence afterward. So now, when he saw the signs of danger, he moved. By nightfall, the eastern ridge had a cleared path. Keanu's hands were blistered. His face was dark with soot. He hadn't eaten, but he smiled when he heard no flames had touched the community center at the bottom of the hill. People were safe, at least for now. Back at camp, Calder received a new radio report. Chief, East Ridge held. Someone dug a fresh break line and moved brush back 40 yards. We think it stopped the embers from spreading. Calder raised an eyebrow. Who did it? We don't know. Maybe the guy you dismissed. Calder said nothing, just stared into the firelight, jaw clenched. The next morning, Calder went to inspect the East Ridge himself. He found shovel marks, charred, gloves, and a scarf tied around a burned tree left like a quiet signal. When he picked it up, he realized something that made him pause. The initials sewn into the edge, J.R. It was the same scarf worn by John Reeves, a fire captain from Montana, who died in a forest blaze in 1993. John Reeves was Keanu's father. Calder stared at the fabric. He realized he hadn't mocked a stranger. He had mocked a man whose pain ran deeper than soot. And now, that man was out there saving lives. Alone. The man behind the mammoth sun had barely risen over the smoky hills. When Calder Haynes arrived at the edge of the East Ridge, he stood alone, crunching across blackened ground, breathing the faint scent of char and pine. The fire line had held narrow but solid. He kicked at the dirt, testing the packed trench. Someone had built it with skill. Not luck. Not chance. And not someone inexperienced. He clenched the scarf tighter in his hand. The faded initials still clear, J.R., as if mocking him with their quiet truth. He turned it over again and again. John Reeves. The name wasn't just familiar. It was part of Calder's past. Decades ago, John Reeves had been respected across the firefighting world, a quiet legend. Calder had been a trainee then, young and full of pride. John had saved his team during a canyon flare-up by sacrificing his own route of escape. Calder owed him his life. And now, all these years later, Calder had pushed away John's son. Keanu Reeves. The name pulsed in his mind, not as a celebrity, not as a movie icon, but as a man with calloused hands and grief in his spine. Calder stood still, letting the wind pass through the trees, soft and regretful. Meanwhile, Keanu sat alone near an abandoned barn on the west slope. His back leaned against a tire, his head tilted to the sky. A makeshift first aid kit sat beside him. His knuckles were raw, his fingers wrapped in gauze. He sipped from a metal thermos, the coffee long gone cold. He hadn't returned to the base. He didn't plan to, not after how he'd been dismissed. But that didn't mean he'd stopped helping. He'd already mapped out weak points in the tree line. He'd hauled out livestock from a fenced yard the night before. A horse with a broken bridle now grazed quietly nearby. Keanu didn't need orders to know what mattered. He had learned that the hard way. 2 hours later, a small jeep pulled up near the barn. Jonah, the young firefighter who'd given him the radio, climbed out with a bag of supplies. "You're a hard man to find," Jonah said with a grin. Keanu stood slowly. "Did you bring more gauze and food?" Jonah said, handing over a sandwich wrapped in foil. "Also, the chief's looking for you." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "I'm not looking for him. I think he realized who you are." Keanu unwrapped the sandwich and sat. "It doesn't matter. Maybe not to you," Jonah said. "But it matters to us." Keanu looked at him, his eyes tired but calm. "I didn't come here to be thanked. I just didn't want anyone else to lose what I lost." Jonah sat on a rock across from him. "Your dad, John Reeves." Keanu nodded slowly. He was brave, but he wasn't flashy. He didn't need people to know his name. Just needed them to breathe one more day. "Sounds like someone else I know," Jonah said. They ate quietly, not as strangers anymore, but as to men on the same side of the fire. Back at the base, Calder stood before his crew. "Listen up," he said. "I made a mistake. Yesterday, I dismissed a man who helped save the East Ridge. He's not on our payroll. He's not in our system, but he is without question. One of the most dedicated individuals I've seen in the field. He paused, swallowing. His pride. That man is Keanu Reeves, and yes, he's the same one from the movies. But that's not why we owe him respect. We owe him because while I was talking, he was working. The crew exchanged glances. Some nodded. Others looked surprised. We don't care about names out here, Calder continued. We care about hands, about grit, about heart, and that man has all three. One of the female firefighters, a woman named Erica, stepped forward. Should we find him? Calder nodded. Yes, and bring him back. Not as a guest, but as one of us. By late afternoon, Jonah's radio crackled. Base to Jonah. Confirm location of Mr. Reeves. Jonah answered. We're on the west slope, near the Red Barn. Keanu's here, Calder's voice came through. Tell him I'm coming. 20 minutes later, Calder arrived in a jeep, dust trailing behind. He stepped out slowly, walking toward Keanu with something like shame on his face. Keanu stood, wiping his hands on a towel. Mr. Reeves, Calder said, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect. Keanu looked at him. That's not necessary. Maybe not to you, Calder said, but it is to me. Your father saved my life once, and I mocked his son. I don't expect you to accept my apology, but I'd like you to come back to base, not because of who you are, but because of what you've done. Keanu studied him, not with anger, not with pride, just quiet reflection. All right, he said. I'll come back. But we work together, no rank, just purpose. Calder nodded, agreed. Back at camp, as night fell, the atmosphere shifted. Word had spread. The mysterious man was no longer a mystery. But what impressed the crew wasn't his fame. It was how he worked, side by side. No complaints, no special treatment, just boots on the ground. As the fire grew stronger in the southern hills, a new threat emerged: an orphanage built near a reservoir. The flames were 2 miles away and closing fast. Calder called a meeting. We need a team to clear a path for evacuation, he said. I'll go. Jonah, Erica, and he turned to Keanu. Ewan? Keanu nodded. Let's move. As the team rolled out in a fire truck under a red sky, Calder glanced over. You still wearing your dad's scarf? Keanu pulled it from his coat pocket. Always. He'd be proud, Calder said. Keanu didn't answer. He didn't have to, because in that moment, the past had met the present, and they were headed straight into the fire, through smoke and silence. The road to the orphanage was narrow and winding, lined with tall pine trees that were now blackened at the edges. The fire truck rumbled forward, carrying Calder, Keanu, Jonah, and Erica into the thickest part of the smoke line. They wore full gear, helmets, packs, and masks ready, but underneath, their nerves stayed quiet. Inside the cabin, Jonah tried to lighten the tension. You'd think a movie star would be more into 5-star hotels than fire trucks. Keanu gave a tired smile. This truck has more heart than any hotel lobby. Even Calder chuckled. The tension eased slightly, but outside, the sky was turning. Orange flames glowed over the ridge like a second sun. The heat pressed against the windows. As they neared the final bend, they saw out a small brick building nestled between trees. The orphanage. About 20 kids, aged 6 to 15, stood huddled in the front yard, along with 2 teachers who looked overwhelmed and scared. Calder grabbed the radio. Base. We've reached the site. Smoke's thick. Trees close. We need an immediate evac plan. Over. Copy that, came the voice from base. We're sending another unit to meet you at the reservoir bridge. That's your evac route. Keanu jumped down from the truck before it fully stopped. He ran toward the kids, motioning them back toward the open field. Everyone stay together. No shouting. Deep breaths. We'll get you out. One of the teachers stared at him. Wait. Are you? Doesn't matter. Keanu said gently. Just help me form 2 lines. Calder and Erica moved fast, setting up a perimeter with water hoses while Jonah helped distribute wet cloths to cover the kids' mouths. But just as they were about to begin the walk down the trail, a gust of wind shifted the fire's direction. Flames leapt from the trees to a small shed nearby. The kids screamed. Smoke rolled across the yard like a wave. Change of plan, Calder shouted. We cut through the south trail, Now. They had minutes, maybe less, before the path back would be gone. Keanu hoisted a child onto his back and held the hand of another. His voice was calm but firm. Walk fast, don't run. Stay close. They moved as a unit, through brush and rising heat. Trees crackled, animals fled. The trail grew tighter with every step. Erica called out from the rear, "Jonah's down." Calder spun around. Jonah had tripped on a root, twisting his ankle badly. The fire was already licking at the treetops behind him. Before Calder could move, Keanu turned back. "I got him." He rushed to Jonah's side, pulled his arm over his shoulders, and lifted him with strength that didn't come from muscles but from memory. "I've got you," Keanu whispered. Jonah coughed. "This is not what I expected when I joined the crew. No one ever expects the hard part," Keanu said. "They just remember who helped them through it." They caught up to the others. The field opened ahead, and beyond it, the bridge. The second fire truck waited across it, hoses spraying water, doors open. Calder turned. "Last kids across, move." As the team crossed the bridge, the flames devoured the trees behind them. But everyone was safe. All 20 kids. The teachers, the crew, they stood together on the other side, coughing, sweating, but alive. The children stared at Keanu, eyes wide. One little boy, maybe 7, stepped forward. "You're in the movies, aren't you?" Keanu knelt in front of him. "Sometimes. But today, I'm just someone who was lucky enough to help." The boy hugged him without asking. Others followed. Soon, Keanu was surrounded by small arms and ash-covered smiles. Calder watched from a few steps back. He looked at Erica, then Jonah, whose ankle was being wrapped by paramedics. "That man," Calder said quietly, "he's more firefighter than most men I've trained." Erica nodded. "He doesn't want the credit. He just wants people safe." As night fell, they returned to the base. News had already spread. The rescued children were being driven to temporary housing. The crew was being hailed for bravery. But when reporters arrived, Keanu stayed inside the tent. He didn't speak to cameras, didn't want interviews. He just cleaned his boots in silence. Calder found him there. He stood quietly. "Before speaking, I said some things that can't be taken back." Keanu didn't look up. "I've heard worse. You didn't have to save Jonah." Keanu finally glanced up. "You didn't have to come back for me." They looked at each other. Something silent passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. "You're not just your father's son," Calder said. "You're your own man." Keanu nodded. "He taught me that heroes don't wear capes. They wear grief and still move forward." Calder reached into his coat and pulled out the scarf. John Reeves's scarf. "I found this. I believe it's yours." Keanu took it gently. "Thank you." But just then, a new alert came over the radio. Possible flare-up near Ridge 12. Smoke spotted. No crew on site yet. Calder looked at Keanu. "You up for another round?" Keanu stood. "No hesitation. Let's go." Because fire didn't wait. And neither did he. A wall of flame and a door of Hopethi air near Ridge 12 was different. Hotter. Tighter. Even before they arrived, Keanu could feel the pressure change. Not just from the fire, but from something deeper. Something that pressed on the chest and whispered, "This is where it gets worse before it gets better." The fire crew's truck roared up the dusty incline. Calder stood in the back, gripping the edge, eyes narrowed as he scanned the hillside. Behind him, Keanu checked their water tanks. Erica and Jonah were silent, focused. "What's the terrain like?" Calder shouted over the engine. "Old forest. Cabins, scattered. One road in. Steep drop-off behind." Jonah answered. Calder turned to Keanu. "Think we can hold it?" Keanu didn't blink. "If we move fast, yes, but we'll need everyone. No sidelines. Then we move as one." Calder said. The truck stopped just before the last tree line. Ahead, a cabin was already smoking. 2 others stood nearby, untouched for now. Keanu jumped off the truck before it stopped, running up the gravel with a hose over his shoulder. Calder barked orders behind him. "Erica, check the back windows. Jonah, get the backup tank set." Inside the nearest cabin, an old man in a wheelchair sat, coughing, eyes wide with fear. A nurse was with him, trying to push the chair through thick smoke. Keanu burst through the door. "I got you." He wrapped his arms around the chair and lifted it like it weighed nothing. The nurse followed, clutching a bag of medication. Outside, flames leapt to the nearest pine tree, clear a path. Keanu shouted. Jonah and Erica sprayed water across the yard as Keanu sprinted through smoke, carrying the man to safety. The nurse collapsed near the truck, crying. "We thought we'd die in there," she whispered. Keanu didn't answer. He just nodded and turned back toward the next cabin. Calder watched him go. He moves like he's done this his whole life. He moves like he's trying to outrun something, Erica said quietly. Keanu reached the second cabin just as a small explosion rocked the back corner propane tank. The blast shook the earth. He ducked instinctively, then kicked the front door open. A woman screamed from inside. "Please, my daughter. She's in the attic." Keanu didn't hesitate. He ran inside, up a narrow staircase. Flames crawled along the walls, smoke thickened. In the attic, a young girl no older than 10 was curled beneath a blanket, eyes wide, coughing hard. Keanu pulled off his jacket and wrapped her in it. "I'm Keanu. You're safe, just hold on." He kicked out a small window, then radioed Calder. "I've got a kid. Attic window, north side." "We're coming," Calder answered. Within seconds, a ladder slammed against the side of the cabin. Erica climbed fast. Keanu passed the girl to her, then followed. As soon as his boots hit the grass, the roof caved in behind him. Everyone screamed. But he was already clear. The girl sobbed in her mother's arms. The nurse hugged the old man. The rescued were safe, alive. And the fire had started to slow. Hours later, after the perimeter was reinforced and flare-ups extinguished, the crew sat in the truck bed, exhausted. Calder handed out water bottles, his hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline crashing. He turned to Keanu. "You ever consider leading your own team?" Keanu took a long drink before answering. "No." "Why not?" Calder asked. "Because I've spent most of my life watching people lead the wrong way. I'd rather just be the one pulling someone from the fire." Calder nodded slowly. "You've pulled more than just people today." Keanu looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You pulled me out of pride," Calder said. "You made me realize leadership isn't about barking orders, it's about carrying weight, quietly." Just then, a young journalist arrived. She'd been following the story of the wildfire for the local news station. She approached carefully. "Mr. Reeves," she said, "we've heard what you've been doing. The town wants to thank you." Keanu held up a hand. "Please don't turn this into a headline. But people want to know why someone like you came here, worked like this, risked this much." Keanu looked at the others, then back at her. "Because once, someone saved my family, a stranger, and I never got to say thank you. So now, I try to be that stranger for someone else." The journalist lowered her mic. "Off the record," she said. "You're the kind of story that gives people hope." Keanu nodded. "Hope doesn't need my name. Just a reason to keep breathing." The crew fell into silence again. As the stars came out and the sky cooled, Jonah broke the stillness. "Do you think the fire's done?" Calder looked into the trees. "No, but I think we're winning." They all stared at the dark horizon. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out the scarf again, his father's initials still stitched into the corner. He tied it around his wrist and whispered, "You'd have liked this crew, Dad, and far off in the hills." The fire crackled quieter now, not gone, but no longer unchallenged, because the line had been drawn, and a man who came to help without asking was now leading without permission. The letter in the ashes town of Pine Ridge awoke to a morning wrapped in gold and gray. Sunlight pierced through lingering smoke, casting long shadows on the quiet streets. Birds returned. Timidly, the fire had not been fully defeated, but it had been slowed, controlled. People stepped outside for the first time in days, blinking up at the sky with hope. At the temporary fire base, things were quieter than usual. Radios still buzzed, but not in panic. Boots still moved, but not in chaos. Instead of shouting, there were conversations. Relief had settled in like a second sunrise. In the middle of it all, Keanu Reeves sat alone on the tailgate of an old fire truck, wiping ash from his gear with slow, steady strokes. His hands were blistered, his shirt torn at the shoulder, but his eyes were clear. He watched as Calder walked by, clipboard in hand, delegating with a calmness that hadn't been there before. Something had changed in the fire chief, something deeper than policy. Calder paused near Keanu. "You didn't come here to be seen," he said. "No," Keanu replied. "I came because people were trapped, and I remember what that feels like." "Well," Calder said, tapping the clipboard gently, "you ended up saving more than just people." Keanu gave a soft smile. "We saved each other." Before Calder could respond, Jonah ran up from the mess tent, holding a yellow envelope. "Chief, this came for Keanu. Hand-delivered, no return address." Calder handed it to Keanu, who turned it over slowly. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He read it once, quietly, then again. Finally, he handed it to Calder. It read, "You saved my daughter from that attic. You probably don't remember us, but she hasn't stopped talking about you. We lost our home in the fire, but not our hope. You reminded her that there are still good people in the world. You reminded me, too. Thank you. A mother who finally believes again." Calder's eyes softened. He handed the letter back. "You get a lot of letters like that." Keanu folded it carefully. "No, but one is enough." Just then, Erica approached with her phone. "Keanu, you need to see this." She showed him a video. It was a cell phone clip taken by one of the rescued kids. It showed Keanu carrying Jonah through smoke. The caption read, "He didn't have to help, but he did." The video had already gone viral. Millions of views, comments from all over the world. Words like humble, real hero, silent strength. Keanu winced. "I didn't want this." "I know," Erica said, "but maybe the world needed to see it." Calder nodded. "This isn't about fame. It's about reminding people what courage looks like when no one's watching." Keanu looked around the base at the crew he had come to respect, the volunteers who had pushed past exhaustion, and the people who no longer looked at him as a movie star but as one of their own. "What's next?" he asked quietly. Calder took a breath. "Fire's mostly under control. Now we shift to cleanup, rebuilding, helping families, hard work." Keanu nodded. "Then that's where I'll be." Jonah limped over, still favoring his twisted ankle. "You ever think about joining full-time?" Keanu laughed softly. "I think I already did." That afternoon, they drove together to the edge of the containment line. Bulldozers moved fallen trees. Water trucks soaked hot spots. A makeshift shelter had been built near the community center. Families gathered there, some sleeping on cots, others serving soup. As Keanu helped lift a box of supplies from a flatbed truck, a child ran up to him, small, wide-eyed, holding a crumpled drawing. It showed a stick figure with black hair carrying another stick figure through flames. The sky was orange. The house was smoking. The child handed it to him. "That's you," she whispered. Keanu crouched down. "Thank you. It's beautiful." She looked up at him. "Serious? My mom said you were an angel." Keanu shook his head. "No, just a man who showed up when it mattered." The girl leaned forward and kissed his soot-covered cheek. He didn't move, just smiled. That night, the entire crew gathered at the base for the first meal without alarms. A bonfire crackled in a pit made from scrap bricks. The smoke that rose was no longer from fear but from warmth. Calder stood and raised a cup. "To the people who show up, whether the world sees them or not." Everyone echoed, "To the people who show up." Then Jonah stood. "And to the man who reminded us that real strength is silent, humble, and covered in ash." Applause followed. Keanu stood last, hesitant. "I didn't come here for praise," he said, voice soft. "I came here because I know what it's like to lose someone and wish, just once, that someone had arrived a minute earlier." He paused. The firelight flickered on his face. "So now, I try to be that minute." And then he sat. No one spoke for a while. They didn't have to. The fire had revealed more than just the damage of nature. It had revealed the character of a man. The world thought they knew and found out they didn't know at all. And tomorrow, something even greater was about to unfold, because a letter had arrived at City Hall, addressed to the Pine Ridge Fire Department. Signed by the governor and the Name in bold print at the top, Keanu Reeves, the one who stayed 3 days after the final flare was contained. The town of Pine Ridge looked different, not because of the damage but because of the light returning. Children played again in yards lined with ash, neighbors passed out food and bottled water on street corners. Strangers helped strangers without being asked. And at the heart of it all was the quiet presence of a man who had come to help and never asked for anything in return. KeanuReeves. But this time, he wasn't anonymous anymore. Early that morning, Fire Chief Calder Haynes received a call from the mayor's office, then another from the governor's liaison. The news traveled fast. A recognition ceremony had been arranged, not in Hollywood, not on television, but here, in Pine Ridge, for the people. With no red carpet, just a red engine parked in front of the school gym. Keanu didn't want it. He said so clearly, "I didn't do this for awards," he told Calder. "It's not an award." Calder replied, "It's gratitude. That's not why I stayed." "I know," Calder said, "but that's why it matters even more." Inside the gym, folding chairs were lined in neat rows. Families, firefighters, teachers, and children filled the space. Reporters were allowed on one condition: no microphones near Keanu. No questions. Just witness. The governor stepped up to the podium. He didn't bring a script. Sometimes we meet someone who reminds us what courage really looks like. Not in movies, not in speeches, but in actions. When the flames came, this man didn't run. He didn't hesitate. He helped carry the people we love. He worked side by side with our firefighters. He never once asked for thanks. He paused and looked directly at Keanu, who sat in the back row in a faded jacket and work boots. "KeanuReeves," the governor said, "we honor you not for who the world thinks you are, but for what you showed us when the cameras weren't rolling." Slowly, he unfolded a framed document. It was a proclamation from the state, naming Keanu an honorary firefighter of California. Keanu looked stunned. The room stood and clapped. But he didn't move, not until Calder stepped up beside him and said, "Your father would be proud." Then Keanu rose, quietly, humbly. He didn't walk to the front. He didn't take the spotlight. Instead, he walked toward the fire crew, shook each of their hands, hugged Jonah, nodded to Erica, and stood beside them, not above them, because that's where he belonged. As the ceremony ended, the children he helped rescue ran up to him, arms around his waist. One held his hand tightly. "Will you stay in Pine Ridge?" she asked. He looked down at her, then at the people, the town, the hills still healing, and he said, "Maybe not forever, but for a while." The next week, Keanu helped rebuild the orphanage. He painted fences, hauled lumber, and read books to the younger kids under the trees. People offered him hotel suites, private flights, even donations in his name. He declined them all. Instead, he set up a small fund for the local fire department, anonymously, until Calder found the check with only a hand-drawn flame and the initials K.R. Months passed. Pine Ridge recovered. The scars of the fire remained, but so did something else. A legacy. Because whenever someone doubted their strength, the townspeople would say, "Remember when he showed up? Not just a man from the movies. But a man who walked into the smoke and never asked to be seen." One evening, long after most of the crews had rotated out, Calder found Keanu sitting on the same fire truck tailgate, staring at the sunset. "You never said why you really came here," Calder said. Keanu took a breath. "Because fire took someone from me, and I couldn't stop it. But maybe, just maybe, I could stop it from taking someone else." They sat in silence. The wind picked up. A soft breeze through pine trees. "Reborn." Calder stood. "You ever think about becoming a permanent part of this department?" Keanu smiled faintly. "Maybe not on paper, but in spirit?" Calder asked. Keanu looked toward the hills, already there. And with that, he picked up a shovel, because there was still work to be done. And the fire had taught them all something. Sometimes, the real heroes don't ask to be remembered. They just stay until it's safe. And leave behind something stronger than fire. Hope.